Hi everybody. This video is a quick overview of the UV support we've added to MeshFusion in version 104. Our UV system is based on the UVs of your source meshes. It automatically generates a UV map that completely covers the Fusion mesh by carving up those source mesh UVs and adding UVs for the strip geometry. The resulting UV map treats each surface patch and strip separately. So no contiguous UV polys are created across those elements. Nonetheless, the original mesh UVs are preserved and the entire Fusion mesh is covered. So these maps are still very useful for general texturing and perfectly fine for 3D paint. Naturally, since this is all based on the source mesh UVs, your source meshes need UV maps, and any UV map will do. We've provided new cubic primitives with UV maps in the 104 kit. For any other meshes, you can create UVs using any method that you like. There are a couple of new interface items for Fusion UVs. This button that enables the Fusion items UVs, and a utility script found here in the More Fusion pop-up form that helps with scaling and packing of the source mesh UVs. Turning on UVs at the very start allows you to preview the textured surface while modeling in MeshFusion. Or you may choose to model with UVs off and enable them just prior to outputting the mesh. In either case, UV maps for all the source meshes need to be packed in UV space so that they don't overlap. That's where the utility script comes in. It does two things: freezes the scale transforms of all the source meshes and packs their UV maps into a single 1x1 UV space. That first step, freezing the scale transforms, normalizes the scale of all the source meshes, ensuring that the relative scales of those various source mesh UVs sync up with their relative 3D sizes. That first step is the same as using MODO's freeze scale option in the mesh items transform. Freezing the scale doesn't prevent further editing of the mesh or change its geometry in any way. The second step of the script, packing, is the same as using MODO's pack UVs options found here in the UV editor, with pack and stretch enabled and gaps set to 50%. Of course, you can perform those same steps manually if you prefer, or have a need of a more custom UV mapping. If you choose to pack manually, keep in mind that Fusion tends to expand UV maps somewhat, so it's a good idea not to pack them too closely. And using stretch is important. Again, combined with the normalizing of scales, it keeps UVs proportional to the 3D size of the source meshes. All right, so let's see this in action. Here's a Fusion item made with 3 cubic source meshes. As usual, each source mesh's UV map fills the entire 1x1 UV space. So before packing, they overlap. I'll use that utility script in More Fusion called Scale and Pack UVs, which brings up this alert simply telling you what it's about to do. And afterwards, the combined UVs look like this. That Scale and Pack UVs script automatically selected all of the source meshes of the current Fusion item and packed them together into one UV space. By default, Fusion UV mesh generation is off. So let's click Fusion Mesh UVs in the MeshFusion Properties panel, and then add an image to the Fusion surface material so we can see the effect. Okay, so this is handy for getting a preview of your UVs and texture, and some textures will even look pretty good in spite of the lack of continuity across surface patches and strips. However, since the Fusion mesh is dynamic, and we have no direct access to the Fusion items UV map, it's really just a rough preview. The real goal here is to set up UVs for your final mesh output. So let's output that final mesh. I select Airtight Final in the Mesh Mode pop-up, and then hit Dupe and Convert to Mesh. Followed by the usual mesh output options. I did not use Airtight Final with parts. That's not required for generating UVs with your output mesh. With the output mesh selected and its map selected in the Lists tab, this is what we get in the UV viewport. The output mesh's UV map appears in white. The source meshes are visible but not selected, so their original UV maps appear in black. You can see that the Fusion UV map is based on the original UV maps. Away from the boundaries, the output UV mesh is simply a subdivision of some parts of the original meshes. The boundaries of the output mesh's UV pieces are where the original surfaces end and the Fusion strips begin. The strips are UV mapped separately and independently from the source meshes. Strip UVs always show up as long, horizontal, rectangular pieces, and the Fusion code places them in the lower left corner of the UV square. This is just a temporary location for them, since they overlap each other there and might overlap some of the original surface UVs as well. While modeling in MeshFusion, strips appear and disappear and change their length and width, so it makes sense to assign permanent positions in UV for them only after the Fusion model has been converted to an output mesh. So let's do that now with this output mesh. So we'll use Pack UVs to do that, this time with the Fusion output mesh selected. This achieves two things. The UV map is repacked without the parts of the original meshes that were discarded as a result of Boolean interaction, and of course the strips are packed as well. So now you're ready to texture your Fusion mesh any way you like. Obviously more work can be done on the UV map if you wish to create larger contiguous areas, that sort of thing. But as I mentioned earlier, this mesh is ready to go for 3D paint, and with large chunks of the original surface still available in the map. It's pretty good for applying decal style textures and that sort of thing. In any case, hope you have fun with it and let us know what you think. Thanks. Bye.